Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 335. Today we're going to talk about AquaSphere. This is a new game from Stefan Feld and being published in the United States by Tasty Minstrel Games. Plays 2 to 4 players, takes about an hour and a half or so once you get the feel of it. And if you're familiar with Feld games, it is basically like a Trajan or Bora Bora style game, a little bit heavier, a lot to really chew on and piece together. But let's jump into how the game works. So the idea in AquaSphere is that each player is a scientist and they are programming a team of their robots to go down and investigate and try to recover these fancy crystals, as well as fight back the octopods which are trying to cause havoc. Each player has a player board, and this will have your team of bots and submarines on it, as well as a cheat sheet for scoring, and also a little program matrix where you'll be placing bots to take actions out on the main board. Here you can see the main board set up for a 4-player game. It's quite overwhelming at first. There's a lot of colorful icons and things on it, but it's really straightforward once you get to know it. There's also a program board, and this is where players will be moving their scientists to help program their bots to set them up and take further actions on the main board. Players will also be dealt one of these starting labs, and here you can see a variety of information. It'll give you the starting zone for your player, as well as showing you the capacity for things that you can hold. So this is showing you can hold 4 time, 2 crystals, 2 special ability cards, and be able to kill 2 octopods at once. So this showed us that we're going to start in Sector C, which means we get to place one of our submarines and our scientists in that sector. And if you notice, that sector will also start with an octopod and a crystal. All the other players will randomly get set up, and then in any of the empty sectors, depending on the number of players, you may have different amounts of octopods and crystals in those sectors. Now, each player will get 4 time, unless you start next to an airlock that has 0 time cost next to it, and then you only get 3 time. So the 3 basic actions on your turn. You can move a scientist on the headquarters track, which will queue up a bot. You can actually activate one of those bots to take one of the actions out on the main player board. And then once per round, you can, if you want, you can spend 3 of those time tokens to program a bot to do any activity that you wish. So how do you get points in the game? Let's talk about that first before we talk about what the actions are. Well, here you can see there's an intermediate scoring round after each of the 4 rounds, and then you've also got an end game scoring, which will happen after the 4th round. So you get points at the end of the round for having cleared bots off of your player board. You can see the number of points here, but you've also got to get submarines up to the different levels to unlock those different point modifiers to actually score the points. During the round, you also get points for killing octopods, and at the end of the round, you will get points for collecting crystals. And finally, as you take actions, your bots are going to go out on the board. So the player that has the most bots in the control panels of each of the different sectors is going to have control. They're going to get 6 points, or if they're tied, they get 3. But you've got to be careful, because if you have a bot in a sector that has octopods that haven't been cleared out, you're also going to lose points for each sector that you have one of your bots with accompanying octopods. Finally, throughout the game, you're going to be collecting these lab extensions, and if you complete a full lab, you get an extra 5 points. And you're also going to be taking a look at the letters on all the lab extensions, and you're going to get more points for the more different letters that you have. Finally, if you clear off all 6 of your subs on the board, you'll get 5 points, and you get 1 point for each time marker at the end of the game. So the first action you can do is actually move your scientist into one of the spots on the matrix. And as you can see here, you can't actually move left or right. You're always kind of progressing up the track. And each round is going to shuffle up all of the program tokens, so you're going to have a different order of these tokens every round, but you can see the card coming up. So as you play the game, you actually will start looking at the upcoming round's order to really plan out your turns. So as I said before, you take a bot from your player board and move it up to the program slot that matches where you moved your scientist. You can never have more than 2 bots at any time queued up. That's simply what you do. You move the scientist and put the bot in the action corresponding. So let's walk through all the different actions on the board. First action here is to expand your lab. So if we take a look at the board here, we can see that each of the sectors has a corresponding space to each of the actions that you can program in the game. So if we wanted to, for example, take the expand the lab token here, we've got our scientists here, we could go ahead and take the lab token associated with this spot. If you wanted to grab one of the bonus cards, you could take that. If you want to take the action to get time, you can grab this. You can also kill the octopods in this sector or gather crystals and so on. Now let's say we didn't really want the lab expansion in the sector that we're currently in. Well, we can take and move our scientist to any other sector, but you have to pay the amount of time shown by any of the airlocks that you pass through. So in this case, we'd have to pay 2 time to move to our neighboring sector, And in this case, we could take the lab extension and then add it to our lab. So that's a pretty big part of the game. You're trying to figure out where to move to, where to snag things, and try to get things from underneath somebody else. So there might be crystals kind of piling up round over round, or octopods piling up. So you want to have enough time to sort of move over there and get to that sector. But you also kind of want to be thinking ahead to like, okay, I could go here and get this card, and then I'll be right next to this space, which only had cost me one time. I can go in there. That's going to have a lot of octopods. So there's a little bit of planning, well, a lot of planning that you can do to sort of, figure out which is the kind of the good, side of the board to be on, and where you're going to be able to spend your time most wisely. Now, after you're moving your scientists to whatever sector you want to take the action in, you're actually going to plug your bot into the little programming panel for that sector. If there are any other bots in that sector, you're going to move them to that sector's loading station and then plug your bot in. Each of these loading stations can hold a different amount of bots based on the number of players, but once you hit that maximum, you're going to take all the bots, leaving one of each color in the station, and then you load them back onto each of the players' player boards, covering up their points. So the next action here is to take time, and that very simply is taking the stack of time markers on the sector that you move to. And if there's no time markers on the board, then you're going to get at least 2. The next action is to take crystals, and remember, you are bound by your capacity for crystals, but you just go ahead and take those crystals. The next action here will be to kill off octopods, and the amount of octopods you can kill is again defined by your lab. So if we had this lab extension here, we can actually kill up to 3 octopods at once. So it's better to kill more at once than to kill them onesie-twosie over time. The scoring for everything in this game works a little bit differently. Basically, there's 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, and so on. What that is, I don't remember. There's some weird formula for it, but it's the first number plus 2, the next number plus 3, the next number plus 4, and plus 5. It's all on your player board, but everything goes 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21 after that, I think. And so that's how everything's going to score. So if you just kill one octopod, you get 1 point, and you go kill another one, you get 1 point. But if you kill them both at the same time, you'd get 3 points. So you want to find the spots where they're going to build up and attack and grab those. Next action here is to put a submarine out, and you can never have more than 1 submarine of your color in a zone, and the cost is going to go up per submarine that's there. So everybody starts with the submarine in their starting sector, and then to add a second submarine to one of those sectors would cost 2 time, and then 3, and then 4 time. And if you notice here, there's a little light bulb with a dot in the middle, and that is the amount of points you're going to score for the submarine. In the first round, you'll score 2 points, and the second round, you'll score 3, and so on. The next action here is to get one of the bonus cards. And again, you're limited by the number of gear icons on your lab. And you simply go here and grab this card and add it to your display. And again, you're going to score points displayed by the current round. So these bonus cards are a big part of the game. There's a lot of different special abilities you can get. Some of them will let you sort of break the rules of movement, either on the programming board or on the main board. Some of them will give you bonuses when you do different programming actions. So every time you program, I don't know, the thing to get time, you'll get points, or you'll get a crystal or something. And so there's a lot of these. You want to grab these early, especially some of them, and that will help you do little combo things, maybe do extra programming actions. Some of them will happen at the scoring round. So a lot of them will say, at the beginning of the scoring round, you can set and program a bot for 1 time and automatically have a guy queued up for the next round. So there's a whole bunch of these, and these are big. You don't want to ignore these at all. Finally, the last action is the program a bot action. And what that does is you move your scientists to the program a bot action for the space, and that actually corresponds to another programming on your board. So if we look here, we can actually move our scientists here to program the kill an octopod action on our board. And this is a little bit counterintuitive to start with, but remember, as you move up that program track, you're going to hose yourself out of things. You're going to leave things behind and not necessarily be able to get at things, especially how they get ordered. So this can actually come in handy to getting you just to that extra spot where you need to be to trigger off the cool thing that you were trying to do. Now, as the turns move along, players will pass. As you pass, you move your scientists on the program board to the first slot available, and that will set the turn order for the following round. Now, before I talk about scoring in more detail, the one thing to notice is there are these red laser beams throughout the score track, and before you can pass them, you need to actually discard a crystal, and if you don't have any crystals, you can actually deprogram a bot to move past the red laser beam. You really want to store up crystals in expectation of scoring a lot of points later on. So that's pretty much all you can do in the game. A couple other things to note. I mentioned this earlier. You can spend 3 time and program a bot anywhere, so it doesn't really matter where you are on that matrix. You can do that once per round. And the other thing you can do is you can deactivate a bot that's in a program spot to get 2 time back. So maybe you change your mind or something different happens on the board, somebody snags the octopods you were really wanting, so you want to kind of change up a little bit. So you can do that. That doesn't cost an action, it's just something you can do on your turn. So as I said, at the end of the round, you get 6 points if you control the most spots. So getting in there kind of at the end and pushing people around and going into different sectors is going to be cool because you get more points. But again, you're probably going to be spending more time moving your scientists from sector to sector to plug in those bots in each of the sectors. So you want to collect crystals and stay away from the octopods, obviously, because those will reduce points. Again, if you have a bot in a sector that has octopods, you're going to lose 1, 3, 6, 5 1, 3, 6, 10, 15 points there. So you don't want to be around a lot of octopods at all. And so, like I said, at the end of the game, you get points for, having the completed labs and, clearing off maybe all your submarines. You're going to get a lot of points usually from the round to round by having all your bots cleared off. And so that's something, the interaction there, let's just move into the review part here. The interaction there is interesting. It's a little bit more interactive than a Feld game, probably not quite as interactive as Bora Bora, but at least with his later work in the last few years, they're not hugely interactive in this regard. So talking about player count, it's a lot more fun, I think, with 4 players because you can see, okay, I'm going to move in here, and then, he's really going for octopods. You can see what everybody's programmed, so you can try to sort of slip through and, score points in different ways, and then trigger like a whole bunch of bots going back into somebody's player board and, grabbing things first and all that. So it's an interesting kind of interaction in this game. You don't really necessarily attack anybody, but it feels a little bit more interactive than something like, Castles of Burgundy, where you're just taking something from somebody. Yeah, you're kind of doing that here, but you're also sort of pushing their bots out of the way, a little bit of area control. Where does this sit? I really enjoy this game. It's a lot of fun to play. It's very simple. I mean, it looks really, really complicated, but it's really not. Once you play like a round or so, definitely a game or so, you're going to be into it because you either move your scientist, queue up your bot, or activate your bot, and you do whatever it says. Take the lab extension, take the card, take the crystals, whatever. The complexity and the strategy is really going to come from looking at that program matrix, looking at the following round's program matrix, looking at the bonus cards that you have, and then figure out how and when you're going to need to upgrade your capacity. But so where would this sit for me, if you were to compare it with the Felds? Well, it's right up there with Bora Bora and Trajan for me. I think I need to play it more, because one thing that I've noticed about especially Bora Bora and Trajan is you get better at them. And this is one I can see, I've seen myself get better at it. So this is what right now I have a third behind those. My favorite Feld, just so everybody knows, is Bora Bora followed by Trajan, and might be this one. I mean, he has so many good games. It's really hard to say. I mean, I really like Spikerstadt. That's very underrated, especially with the expansion. And Bruges, I'm excited to play. That's a lot lower on my list, but the expansion seems like it'll improve that. I really liked Lazy this year. Rialto is definitely underrated. And so this is in there. It's in the top. It's one of his good ones. There's a few I don't like from him. Macau, I need to play again. Honestly, it's been a while since I played it. And Marigot, I didn't like that at all. And there's some other ones I'm forgetting. But this is at the top or upper echelon of it. This is one that is, it's going to be a keeper, or it's really going to be hard to get rid of, because I have like a shelf of Felds. And I do have Trajan and Bora Bora there that will kind of are the heavier, sort of more later period Felds. But this is nice. I mean, the artwork's cool. It's a lot better artwork than either of those games, even Bora Bora, which is so colorful. This is nice. I mean, it does kind of fit the theme. I know it's not like the mechanics are not thematic at all. I'm not even going to try to make that argument at all. But it is kind of themey. I mean, the art does give you a sense of atmosphere, at least. Maybe not theme, but of atmosphere. You kind of feel like you're moving around underground water and you're fighting off the octopods and stuff. But, I mean, that all dissipates once you start worrying about how many points you're going to score. And that's just how Feld works. So it's good. I would say if you like his heavier stuff, or maybe you want to move into his heavier stuff, this would probably be a good one, because it's right on that cusp where Trajan is very overwhelming, I think, the first time you play it, and Bora Bora can be a little bit brutalizing, which is why I like it. But this is not as brutalizing. It's fun. You get to push some pieces around a little bit as you kind of learn what all the special abilities and things are of the cards. But like I said, there's some depth there. You can get better at it. You can improve. And I feel like that's the cool part about a lot of Feld games, but especially his heavier games, you can feel like, okay, let's play that again. I could have done this and this different. You know, even if you win, you're like, oh, I could have done this, this, and this. Or the other player would have known better, and, you know, then I would have to change my rules. So definitely take a look at it. I definitely get a good recommendation for me on this one. Unless for some reason you're like, I have too many Felds, then, you know, maybe not. But I think this will hit in the upper echelon. Maybe push another Feld of yours out or not. So, okay, thanks.